I'm Amy Eddings, host of Morning Edition on WKSU Ideastream Public Media. Thank you for joining me for A Slice of Politics. As you can hear, I'm not in the studio. I'm at Sunrise Inn, a pizzeria near downtown Warren, Ohio, the seat of Trumbull County. In these highly charged partisan times, people tell us they're reluctant to talk politics with others for fear of getting into bitter exchanges. Yet, talk we must, if we are to engage in a democratic exchange of ideas and work together on building a more perfect union. 4 voters from in and around Warren have joined me to discuss, in a frank and respectful way, what's at stake for them in this election. Why Warren? As a former manufacturing hub, the city mirrors the shifting economic and political landscape found in other parts of Ohio. Perhaps you'll recognize yourself or your community in their comments, even when you don't share their point of view. That's the goal of A Slice of Politics, to understand where those who disagree with us are coming from. Marwan Ali, Paul Ringgold, Julie Stout, Riley DeCavich, thank you so much for joining me. So we'll start with introductions. Riley, I'm going to ask you all to say your name, your age, where you live, and your occupation. So Riley DeCavich, let me start with you.
Hi, I'm Riley DeCavich. I'm 27. I live in Niles, but grew up in Warren, Champion, Ohio area, and I'm in the manufacturing field.
Julie Stout.
Hi, my name's Julie Stout, and I spend my time in Niles and in Warren, about 50-50, and I am currently unemployed.
Paul Ringgold.
Hi, my name is Pastor Paul Ringgold, pastor Shalom Church of God in Christ here in Warren, and married and 4 daughters, and I'm a lifelong resident of Warren.
And you're 46, and Julie, you just turned 49.
49.
Yeah,
Yes.
Happy birthday, happy belated birthday.
Yeah, happy
Marwan.
birthday.
Hello, my name is Marwan Ali from the Warren area, born and raised. I'm 41 years old, and I'm employed in the real estate industry.
So I'd like to go again, let's work the other way around. How would you describe, Marwan, your political philosophy?
I would say I'm more, Republican-minded, conservative. I have a lot of beliefs, on that aspect.
And how did you come to that?
Time. Time is what did it. I was born and raised, with a more a liberal mindseted family, Democratic. I don't think they really understood too much what Democrat and Republican were. I mean, I was raised like Democrat is poor and Republican is rich, and that's not the case. So it took years of, going off to college, joining the military to actually, elevate my thinking a little bit when it came down to making my own choice.
Paul, how about you? How would you describe your political philosophy?
Well, I am a registered Republican, but I'd say more common sense Republican. I don't vote party lines just because. Just what makes sense, what's right, who's ever's right, whatever's the best interest is where I am. So.
And I know when we talked previous that a lot of what you're looking for is where somebody is being honest and acting in integrity. That was very important to you.
Absolutely. Integrity, honesty. We really can't afford any more, rhetoric and high tension, and so just somebody dial it down, but, get the job done.
Julie, how would you describe your political philosophy?
Well, I would say I'm communist. I'm a member of the Communist Party, and for other people who are communists that care about such things, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, but I'm not too dogmatic about that. So I have to vote strategically because there aren't Communist Party candidates. Typically, I vote Democrat, but not always. I voted Republican in the primary this past time.
And how? Oh, okay. So, and how did you come to this political philosophy?
Well, ironically, I grew up with my parents working at Packard Electric at North River Road. They were members of WIUE 717. So I grew up in a union household, and the values that I was raised with, I discovered as I got older were not the values that most Americans are raised with. And so I had some figuring out to do.
And your dad is a Republican.
Yes,
I
my
know that was
dad is
part
a
of our.
Republican.
Yeah, so explain your situation at home, which I think is
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
cool.
Well, my parents are divorced and they hate each other. So, right, my mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican. And
But you live with your father.
yeah, I live with my dad in Niles, and we have a full regalia of Trump signs, Republican mishmash everywhere. And I wake up to that every day, and it's pretty embarrassing whenever somebody comes to pick me up at the house, but it is what it is, and I love him.
And you have a deal with your dad, Republican in the front and your point of view
I
in
can
the side
put
yard.
whatever I want to on my side of the yard. I haven't had my display up yet. I'm still working on what I want to put on there. But in the meantime, it's Trump City.
Okay. Riley, how about you? How would you describe your political philosophy?
I'm an independent. Though I would kind of lean towards leftist. Most of my ideals go towards left. I came up in a household where the Democrat or Republican wasn't really a thing we discussed. We didn't know. I had no idea. I still don't know. Well, I mean, I have opinions, but my family has never told me straight up what they were. I originally, I started out very conservative when I was in high school, moved towards libertarian. My first election, I voted libertarian, third party. And then after that, I've been voting blue ever since.
Given the intro that I made, and Paul, you had even referenced it, the tension in the nation right now. Why did you agree to participate in this? Why was it important for you to join me for a slice of politics? And I'll start with you.
Well, for one, I normally, I was listening growing up. I was never into politics, and I grew up listening to my father would listen to talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, Dan Rather. I mean, it'd be on the AM station all the time. And as time went by, as I grew up, I found myself having opinions, and I'm talking back to the TV. And so somehow this opportunity knocked at the door, and I was like, okay, this is the big moment here to speak to the world. And so here I am, sitting at this table with these fine people here to share our political beliefs and opinions.
Yeah, that's exciting. Julie, why did you agree to participate in this? What's important about doing this to you?
Representation. I am a poor person, and I don't have very many opportunities to share my ideas with the public. So I want to be able to reflect that in our national decision making. I think that poor people are ignored, our needs.
And this is your opportunity to...
Yes, this is my opportunity to speak for us.
How about you, Riley?
Well, one, I thought it'd be fun. But I think I'm being a part of the LGBTQ. I think it's representation in that fact where hearing alternative, I feel like I'm not the same as a lot of some of the people that fall under my LGBTQ category. I can be a little bit more moderate than some of them, and I think it's important to see, I guess, this viewpoint.
Great. Your last, Marwan, how about you?
Amy, when you first called me, I thought it was just a phone call and that was it. And then look how far I got. But what really interests me was actually the people that I'm sitting with right now. I mean, we're all different-minded people, and now this will prove to people that, talking about anything and everything, including politics, you can have a civil conversation about it. Look at all the people that are separating because of politics or the way they believe. And this here today, this will show that people can have that discussion even if they believe different views.
I like that. So let's start with the economy, because it was something that all of you mentioned was a top concern. You had different ways of approaching it, but and polls show it's what most Americans are thinking about as we head into November 5th. Paul, you're a pastor. You're an independent truck driver. How are you affected by high inflation and high prices?
Well, immediately, fuel costs. My fuel bill on average is $1,000 a week.
And you're an independent truck driver.
I'm an independent, so I pay for all my costs, insurance. And so that was the number one driving source immediately. You feel that immediately. And aside from that, rates, have decreased as well, while insurance costs has gone up. My insurance for this year just renewed in April. It was $1,600, and it was getting ready to renew for $2,200. And I told my wife, there's just no way in the world that I can afford this. Rates on loads aren't paying good enough to maintain just the expense of the trucking as well as my home. And while I am a pastor, I'm not on salary at my church. I don't take a dime from the church, and I've been pastoring 13 years. So, what I do, my livelihood is trucking. That's how I would pay the bills. So I was directly, impacted. Tires, the cost of tires. I mean, I just put 4 tires on one axle. I have 18. It's called an 18-wheeler for a reason. One axle is over $1,600, for 4 tires, and its cost is just outrageous right now.
So you were saying it sounds like you were having this discussion with your wife that you may not be able to afford continuing being a truck driver?
Exactly. Independent.
Yes. So what are you thinking of doing?
Well, we began to rate shop for insurance. We just didn't take that sitting down, and we were able to find another insurance company, and so that was one of the great things. We were able to renew our insurance for $10,000 for the year, so that brought my payment back down between the $8,000 and $1,000 a month range. And so you really have to get out there and shop. You just can't just assume that this is the going rate everywhere. I mean, I understand, things are high everywhere you go, but it's worth looking for the needle in the haystack.
And you mentioned your congregation and the church itself. Are you seeing the economic impact in terms of tithing, or in terms of what your members are coming to you and talking to you about?
Not so much talking to me, but the books talk. And so the collection plate speaks. Well, you've seen offerings decrease, and I totally get it. We have people that are on fixed salaries, some are retired, some young people are working, but they don't have those Delphi jobs. This area has been impacted, greatly by that. When I was coming up, everybody worked at either Delphi, GE, General Motors, or somewhere in the Republic still, but those places are gone. And so at our church, we felt that immediately, and we still feel it.
Marwan, you're in real estate. How did the last 4 years and the post-pandemic inflation and interest rate hike, how did that affect you?
Oh my gosh, where should I start? The interest rates is the primary thing in my field of work, because if interest rates are high, people won't buy, which means realtors can't sell. And then, you're not bringing home a paycheck. So, the interest rates got a lot of people on standby. That was the biggest thing. They're waiting to buy homes. I have lines of people who are just waiting for those rates to drop, and then, they want to go shopping. And then inventory, believe it or not, the out-of-state investors saw an opportunity to come in and make the purchases with cash offers so they don't have to finance. So it's almost like they were waiting many, many years for an opportunity like this, like it was back in 2008. And then on top of that, COVID had a big damper and everything. A lot of businesses had closed down, and nobody was able to do anything at all. The cost of things had went up, including houses. Believe it or not, inventory was still missing a lot during COVID. You would think that we would have so many homes for sale that, you have more of an option, but there was nothing. I don't understand how that happened. But I would say doing that. Gas, fuel prices, like Paul was saying, it's definitely one of the biggest things. Every person here at this table has to be having a problem with fuel, because even me, I travel everywhere for my job. Paul travels everywhere for his job. You guys have to go places as well, even you, Amy. So, those rates right there, some people are sitting there trying to determine if they're going to even, go somewhere today, or they got to eat. So I'd say the impact of that for the most part.
And give me a snapshot now of Warren's housing market.
Lack of inventory. A lot of the houses that had sat for years in more rundown areas are now coming to light. People, they're doing the bare minimum to just throw them on the market because they know that they'll move now. And that's a problem too. So me as a person, a realtor, I do as much research as I can when people are ready to buy those homes to make sure that my clients are well taken care of.
Got it. Julie, how did you mention that you're poor? When we met, you were working Taco Bell, $12 an hour. I'm wondering how the economy affected you these last 4 years.
Well, I can say that I've been pushed out of the regular economy. My boyfriend, he used to make $17 an hour, lost his job, now he's making $11 an hour. I'm not bringing anything in, and our refrigerator's not working, so we go around to churches to get groceries, asking for things that are non-perishable. And so it's like this whole other economy of how you get stuff when you don't have money.
Were you, certainly in the Cleveland area and the Akron area, our food banks are reporting a record increase, quarter after quarter, of people seeking their help. Did you go to? Is your visits to the food bank, were they the first time that you did this?
I did try during COVID because they were well advertised, but every time I tried to go to the food bank, there would not be any food left by the time I got there.
Oh, wow.
And now that it's frequently the case, that's why you see these long lines. You drive around town, you see there's long lines of people waiting outside of churches. They're waiting for food.
Got it. Riley, I know that you switched jobs earlier this year precisely because you wanted to get a higher hourly rate, and you actually left a job that was closer to you in Niles, and one that you really liked. So tell me more about that, and was that because of the economy?
My fiance and I, we've been trying to buy a house recently, and that was our goal. And with my current job, I loved this job. It was, I was able to play at almost all of my strengths. It was fun. I could do a lot of different things, but they couldn't pay. They were a small business. Before I left, I tried working it out with them, but there was no way to get anywhere with them. And then plus, getting insurance was the big thing. With a small company like them, they didn't have insurance or any type of benefits, and I wasn't able. After COVID, my fiance ended up getting kicked off of the government-assisted insurance because they ended that the pause, and so I had to go find another job that I could get insurance that paid more. Now I'm driving over 40 minutes every day to work, when before I was 15 minutes away.
And I'm wondering, you say you want to buy a home. What's the bigger obstacle, mortgage rates or having enough discretionary money to save for a down payment?
Right now, it's the down payment. The interest rates is definitely a concern, but getting the down payment for what we need is the hardest at the moment because it's extremely hard to save.
And Julie, you were campaigning on behalf of the $15 minimum wage constitutional amendment, which failed to make it on the ballot. How do you see that making a difference?
Well, I mean, it's not going to make a difference because they're not going to raise the minimum wage. Making a raise of the minimum wage would make a huge difference in the lives of thousands of people across Ohio. I mean, just when it comes to making choices at the grocery store, making choices about traveling, if I have to go to the doctor this week, I have to drive, I have to put gas in my car. It's affecting people's health, it's affecting people's quality of life, it's affecting people's relationships.
And you had mentioned, you've reminded me that transportation was a top issue for you precisely because you say so much of your income was going to your car.
Right. Most of the money I'm able to make goes to paying for my car, and my boyfriend doesn't have a car at all. He relies on the bus, and the bus service has been significantly impacted in Trumbull County.
Right. Used to be 5 routes. Now they were cut, but they resurrected 2, and those might go away if the funding doesn't come through.
Right. Trumbull County's not serious about public transportation, and we need to be if we're going to be serious about the economy. If they want to attract employers to the area, we need to have public transportation.
Marwan.
I agree with Julie. You know, that $15 minimum wage was a really big thing that people talked about for so long. And what I get from a lot of people, a lot of colleagues of mine, is why should minimum wage go up to $15 when you can just get a better job or whatever? As the price of things go up, so should the wages. That's the bottom line, okay? If they're bringing up your insurance is going up, or the food is going up, then why are they supposed to keep people at small minimum wages? That should go up as well. So the wage should go up as the economy moves.
Wages did go up, they just didn't keep pace with inflation.
Yeah, but imagine how, look at the prices of how everything went up though. So the wages actually need to reflect, how everything went up. I mean, yeah, they can move it up just a little bit, but they also have to take in consideration that things like dramatically went up. So they need to level it out a little bit more better, and that's my opinion.
I know there's been a lot of talk about the high price of things, and certainly after the pandemic or when people started to buy things again, there were supply chain issues. There was high demand to go out and spend those stimulus checks, but then you couldn't find anything at the store to buy because it was all sitting on a dock somewhere in a container ship overseas. That was part of the problem, but I'm wondering where else you see those problems. Riley, I know we talked about price gouging. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's what's going on here?
I 100%. I think they're just trying to make a profit. I can't imagine after COVID that the prices have went up the amount they have, and it's just inflation. Inflation is definitely a huge part of it, and it's global inflation. It's not just us who are affected by it, but the price of gas, I think, is most definitely price gouging. I mean, we've seen prices of gas go down very easily, especially during COVID, which I guess is supply and demand. But I definitely think there's some gouging.
Paul.
I definitely agree on the price gouging. When Riley just mentioned gouging, it just had a shock. I was in a car accident on Saturday.
Yes.
My pickup truck was totaled, and I was in Lordstown, and it was towed by. So Monday morning, now the accident happened Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I was at 5 minutes after 8, and I went in there to ask them if it was possible that I just pay the tow impound fee, have the truck towed to my driveway, and it would give me time to clean it out. I know it's going to be totaled, and I let them know. I haven't even contacted my insurance company, so they don't even know the car is totaled. So, it's still my car. They told me, well, they wanted to know why did I want to do that, and then I explained. I'm like, I'm hurt. I don't feel like rushing to clean this out as soon as I contact the information. They told me the tow bill was $850. It's Monday. The accident happened Saturday. That is price gouging. I'm like, why? I mean, how did we get to 8? So I said he said it was a weekend tow. I'm like, well, we have accidents 7 days a week. How do you justify a weekend tow? It was a weekend recovery. So they charged $450 just to bring it 3 miles, because I was probably less than 3 miles from their yard. $450. I don't even know where they got the other $400 between Saturday, Sunday, and I was at their office at 8:06 Monday morning.
Ouch.
Ouch.
Marwan.
Just to piggyback off of that, because I was in a similar predicament, except I wasn't totaled, and it's surprisingly the same company. What they do is they will tow your vehicle to their impound lot, and then they'll tack on additional fees, price gouging, for sweeping up the outside or the roads or anything like that. And I was a little disappointed. The guy did me a solid, though. It was there for about a week, and they were charging me $1,200. Okay, but he looked at my license plate and it said U.S. Air Force, active duty. And he's like, if you could show me a military ID, I'll let you out of here for $400. Now, I mean, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. But what if it was Riley or Julie or anybody else around here who doesn't have a military ID? That's not fair. So and that's the first thing that pops in my head when he's telling his story.
So where does this go when you step into the polling booth, right?
Yeah.
So you have these personal stories and these frustrations. How is it shaping how you're thinking about the candidates on your ballot this November 5th?
I mean, I know Kamala has talked about putting a team together to research and look into price gouging, and that's one of the reasons I'm in favor of her. I mean, Trump, there's some issues, and then, I mean, we could talk about tariffs too, but, I mean, that's his only economic plan, which, I mean, doesn't address any inflation whatsoever. It's just, I mean, at least in my opinion. Yeah.
Well,
Paul.
actually, Trump was on the Dave Ramsey show, I think a week ago. And Dave Ramsey asked him specifically what would he do. And his first thing that he said was bring down energy. The cost of energy would dramatically impact the economy. And the first thing he went to was oil. Well, I feel like, I'm teeter-totter. Yes, Trump, bring down oil, because I got a $1,000 week fuel bill. You already got me already. And he began to talk about how energy just impacts the entire economy. It hits the bread truck, to Walmart. The cost and those costs are being passed on to the consumer. And when he said that, I was like, that's a common sense issue right there. Bring down energy costs. So,
But how does a president do that, given that oil is it's international, it's influenced by, I was just reading an article about people being concerned about the impact of what appears to be an expanding conflict in the Middle East, how that's going to affect oil exports. Nothing that really a president can do per se, right? I'm wondering what you think your president or your state representative can do to help bring down gas prices.
Well, when Trump was first elected, one of the first things he did do is open up that Keystone Pipeline. And, maybe it was just imaginary hope and whatever, but it seemed, and if you talk to any of my truck driver buddies, they'll tell you that fuel cost was down. And when Joe Biden got back in, fuel costs went right back up. And they'll tell you, they have to admit, because most of them are Democrats, we did better with Trump. That's what they tell me. And that's off of fuel and rates on loads, just hands down.
Riley.
I mean, recently under Biden, we've been drilling more than we've been drilling in the United States, I believe, ever than before. I don't have the specific statistics or anything like that, but with the amount we're drilling, and I know we've had problems where I was mentioning with Russia, where we're trying to not take as much oil from them, but they were a very small portion of our oil reserve. Like, we were barely getting anything from them to begin with. And that's where it leads me to believe it has to just be price gouging from the oil companies, where, it's in the States, we're taking it from the States. We basically can't drill it anymore. So there has to be something within that, I feel.
What would make you feel more positive about your economic situation? Julie?
A revolution. Honestly, I don't see it getting any better. I don't see anything that any of the candidates are going to do leading to an improvement in my situation.
Really? Paul, what would make you feel more positive about your economic situation? What would you want your government to do?
Honestly, that is an interesting question only because I've been looking at some alternative means to really just take care of myself. And so I would end up saying, right now, the government is doing what they do. So, I'm going to do what I got to do.
How about you, Marwan?
Well, besides regulating the price gouging, I would say, the tariffs. The tariffs are important. Keeping the jobs in the country, that's very, very important.
So you're in favor of raising tariffs?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that would help. That would help in that aspect to keep the jobs more local. I mean, right now there's something going on where there's I don't think it's a strike, where the carriers are just kind of waiting with all of our freight, and I mean, we wouldn't really have too much of that if things were in country, don't you think? So that's the way that I look at it. Things would be a lot cheaper, and we would be more efficient when transporting.
Julie?
But we know that the last time that Trump fooled around with tariffs, it hurt our economy really bad, and it hurt the world economy. That's just a fact.
Tariffs do tend to get passed on. I mean, that's what I've heard most economists say, that tariffs get passed on to the consumer. Riley, you wanted to add to that?
The last time he was in office, I think his main tariff was on steel coming in from China. And at the time when that was happening, I was working in a metal distributing plant here. It was in up near Girard. I don't want to say the name of the company. But and from there, I could tell it doesn't do anything if you're not investing in the infrastructure within the United States. I mean, at Warren specifically, we used to have WCI or Republic Steel. I mean, it was a huge area in Warren. I mean, the people in my dad's generation came straight out of high school to go to that job. And for the longest time, they tried selling it when it closed down. And a couple years ago, they shut down the blast furnace. And that's a humongous deal for a steel industry if they shut down the blast furnace. And I mean, it costs millions to billions of dollars to restart a blast furnace and to a steel mill. So that steel mill is dead. There's no one ever who is going to walk into there and start making steel again. That factory is now going to have to be either torn down or turned into something else. So raising a tariff into something like steel, it's not going to do anything. We don't have the infrastructure anymore. We don't have the ability to make the steel here in the States. So all it does is, one, Chinese steel is going to come over more expensive. The American steel at the time was still more expensive than the tariff Chinese steel, so we were still buying Chinese steel. Very few people were buying the American steel anyways. And it would be the same for any other tariff that comes in. We need to invest in infrastructure where, I mean, for example, the Chips and Science Act that I believe that was what it was called, where we're investing in chip manufacturing within the United States. If we invest within these things to gain the infrastructure and then maybe think about tariffs where we have the ability to make these things within the United States, it would be somewhat feasible. But just raising tariffs without the infrastructure, I don't think will do anything besides hurt the consumer.
Paul?
That's not actually correct. When tariffs were raised, because I am a steel hauler, a lot of our business increased. We went to, at the time it was, it's now Cleveland Cliffs. That is still a steel mill that makes steel from raw materials. The coke plant is here in Warren. And so we saw an increase. Not only that, in Farrell, Pennsylvania, which is NLMK, it's a steel mill. They don't make steel from raw materials. They make it from recycled metal. That steel mill was sold to a Russian company or country, or a company, should I say. And Wheatland Tube, which is, I believe, Canadian, maybe. But when we saw that Russian-Ukraine war break out, Wheatland Tube stopped buying steel from NLMK, just cold turkey. And it forced us to go to Cleveland to pick up steel. And to this day, they don't buy steel from NLMK, Wheatland Tube, which is located here in Warren. It comes out of Cleveland Cliffs. And we were grateful for Cliffs to pick up that steel mill and keep, because we did lose WCI, or at that time, RG Steel, which was another company, steel mill that made steel from raw material. And so we directly saw an increase in tariffs on steel, and it helped out here in our local area. And that's not my opinion. I could call you 15 truck drivers and they'll tell you absolutely.
And have them all come down here. All right.
Right.
I want to switch for a moment to Springfield, Ohio. In the national spotlight of late for viral and untrue rumors about its Haitian immigrants. But I think the story is an economic one. Like Warren, Springfield lost manufacturing jobs and population. The city worked to attract employers. These employers needed people to fill these jobs. Haitians in the country legally, through a federal humanitarian program, heard about the jobs, came, chain migration to work there in Springfield. But they came in large enough numbers that it's affected the schools and it's affected the healthcare system for sure. Would you welcome immigrants if it meant helping local employers find workers and growing Warren's and Trumbull County's tax base? And I'll start with you, Marwan.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a person about securing the border, but everything should be on a case-by-case basis. Anybody who comes in with due process, by all means. I mean, this country's so diverse. So, I mean, if it's going to increase revenue, increase the economy, I mean, if nobody else is doing it, then, yeah, I definitely agree that as long as everything is legal about it and everybody is completely all on point, then yeah, I agree.
Do you think Warren could absorb the influx? Say there was a large influx of legal immigrants the way there was in Springfield, housing, for example?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's very hard because, I mean, everything is always on case-by-case basis. So if you're talking about Springfield, where there is like a reduced population versus Warren. I mean, Warren had started increasing the last couple of years, so would there be room? Who knows? I know that people who say they want to secure things like the southern border, their mindset is for the wrong reason. Securing it for our protection is one thing, but securing it because you don't want any of those Mexicans to come in here, that's just wrong, okay? Because, they work a lot harder than the typical American, so keep that in mind.
Julie?
I think the real concern about immigration is whether or not we develop a whole second-class tier of worker. In other words, all of this oppression that immigrants are facing and the threat of deportation that is being bandied about by Republican Congress people, it is set up to create a second tier of worker, the immigrant worker, who can easily be deported. So what happens when those workers say, hey, we need a raise and we're going to organize? How do you organize a union when you're under threat of deportation? And that is how the ruling class creates a new slavery system, a new Jim Crow.
Riley?
I mean, that's a new perspective. I would agree with that, where it does seem it would add a different class of worker, where it's undermines kind of, I mean, that might not be the right word, but them being able to come in and taking a lower paying job, I guess could be problematic, but I would welcome them, but I would hope they would be treated the same as anybody else, especially if they're legal. I'm just curious, since you said, Julie, you said you're Marxist, correct? Do you believe in borders at all? Or is that like country borders?
I never really thought about it before.
Okay, I was just curious. It's just that I've heard from my circles a lot of communist Marxists a lot of times believe in no borders where there's no state, but that might be more anarchist. It was just genuine curiosity. Sorry.
No, that's cool. Paul?
I think your question again was, how would immigrants directly impact?
Well, would you be open? You know, Springfield has been
Right.
in this glare,
Right.
And I'm wondering how you would feel if Warren, in an effort to improve its tax base and attract employers, that a similar situation happened here. Employers come in, and the people who come to fill those jobs happen to be immigrants.
Well, honestly, I would welcome the entire idea for, I guess, a couple different reasons. With the Springfield situation, Governor DeWine said that he had interviewed some of the employers, and they said that the immigrants during the pandemic saved their businesses. When, I don't know, maybe last year, my bank called me and asked me, Mr. Ringgold, well, do you need a loan? Do you want to expand the business? I told him, yeah, I would love to. The only problem is I can't find any drivers smart enough to drive my equipment, so I can't afford to expand. And she said to me, she said, you know what, I'm getting a lot of that from my businesses, that the business is there, but they can't find the workers. So when it comes down to that, I would hire 10 immigrants right now and go buy 10 trucks and put them on the road right now. That would be an income for them. That's income for me. The city benefits immediately. My church, you've seen all those empty seats. It gives me opportunity to do missions work. And so for me, it would be a win-win. I think this is why you see the sanctuary cities, because population is decreasing. I think Warren is down to 38,000. So if you say, can we afford to take in, based off of numbers, absolutely. Because, you know, when population drops, city income tax drops. Once you start that, then you get all of the shenanigans and price gouging on ripping your car off from you on the weekend for $850 because you don't have enough people in the city paying taxes. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is the story that's not being pushed. It's all of the rapists and the drug dealers that are coming across the borders. But the truth of the matter is, and even in Cleveland, I heard that a few weeks ago on this, well, not this particular program, but they were talking about the Welcome Center that you have in Cleveland. And they were asking employers and churches and anyone, landlords, to get around this and help preserve even Cleveland in the history. So when I heard that, I'm like, you know, this makes more sense why we have certain cities around the country embracing this or becoming sanctuary cities. Because the fact of the matter, a lot of people are leaving these areas. They're going to the Carolinas. They've been going to the Carolinas, Arizona. And so when those numbers drop, fundings drop. That's facts.
So your candidate, Donald Trump, is one of the major
I know.
what's the word that I want to say?
He's a front cheerleader.
He's the front cheerleader for deporting illegal immigrants, closing the border because the rapists and the drug dealers are coming across. How do you square your support for him with your more nuanced view of immigration?
That is just a lie, Amy. It's at the end of the day, he's benefiting. At the end of the day, he's benefiting and every other employer is benefiting. And so that's just that's a good talking point. Do we have problems at the border? Absolutely. Are all people coming across the border innocent? No. But at the end of the day, that is just talk. Because if we really wanted to if we weren't benefiting, and that's the thing, Governor DeWine went to those employers. And I think that's the real question. If you go to these employers that want to add a second shift, And I could tell you, case in point, there's a steel processing place in Hubbard, Ohio called Coilworks. The gentleman sold the business. I was delivering coils there. He sold the business because he couldn't deal with this new generation and their work mentality. So a younger person bought the company. And just to make a long story short, I had hope. I'm like, okay, we got a young guy buying this company. He knows how to deal with his generation. He's already fired these new generation.
Wow.
And so my point is, does the immigrants, because they come in willing to work, they come in ready to work, they just want a chance, and so their mentality is different. I'll work, I'll earn my way. They're not looking for a handout. If I'm an employer and I want to expand my business, guess what? I'm going with that when you take a hike.
Julie, you had your hand
Oh,
up.
yeah. The reason I had my hand up was I don't understand what this obsession is of Trump with rapists, because my understanding is a jury found that he was responsible for rape. He had to pay money out because he's a rapist.
Well, again, I think this is, as Paul was saying, these are talking points.
That's it.
And motivators to get people to the polls, and yet it's a much more nuanced position. Marwan, I don't know whether you have any thoughts about.
Yeah, I'm just listening in. We're talking about the southern border and how Donald Trump feels about it, correct?
Yeah.
I'm
Or Kamala Harris for
Yeah.
that matter.
I'm a big believer of securing the border. I don't think shutting it down per se. I think that if we're letting people go and come, then we should, be able to kind of know who's coming in. Like Paul mentioned, and there's hardworking people with families that they want that chance, and I think that's important. There's, I don't know. I like Donald Trump, I do. Okay, but I don't agree with everything he says. I mean, his choice of words, they're rapists and this and that coming in here. I mean, come on, let's keep it really civil. And, it's just kind of yeah.
The rapist might live next door,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're American.
I mean, it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be the Mexican, but I think that, securing the border is important, and a case-by-case basis by letting people get the chance to live that American dream that supposedly is so easy to get, to give them that chance.
So let's talk about Trumbull County. Its 3-member county commission has been rattled by infighting. At meetings over the last 4 years, commissioners have talked over one another. They've traded insults and accusations of not following protocols. The pinnacle may have been in 2022 when Commissioner Nikki Frenchco and Sheriff Paul Monroe, running for re-election this fall, got into a back and forth over the conditions at the county jail. Frenchco was arrested by a sheriff's deputy during a meeting for being disruptive. She sued, arguing her constitutional rights were violated. A federal court sided with her in January. Trumbull County officials are claiming immunity, and they filed an appeal last week. Do you see the Trumbull County Commissioner's dysfunction as part of a bigger national loss of civility, or is this peculiar to Trumbull County? Julie?
I don't think the issue is the civility. I think the issue is that people were dying in jail. And so I would hope somebody would get upset about that. I would hope somebody that would have some words to say at a meeting about somebody getting arrested, finding themselves in jail, and dying because they can't access medical care when they're...
Right. I think 6 inmates have died between 2020 and 2023. Paul, your church does outreach to the jail, yes?
Well, not the county. We were at the juvenile detention center.
I see.
Yes. So, but they've stopped that. We can't even get in.
Why do you think they did that, and what would you like to see done instead?
Well, one thing Mike Wilson has.
Mike Wilson, the candidate running against the sheriff.
Mike Wilson, candidate running for Trumbull County Sheriff's, has committed to getting the clergy back in if he's elected and to get in and to help. But I'm guessing, and this just is just a guess. The clergy couldn't come in, but if you're getting these complaints about the care and the well care. It didn't just start with the letter that was written or the letter that Nikki, Commissioner Frenchco read. One of my pastor friends, Brian, his wife is a counselor, and she came home with complaints about the same situation in that county jail. So, you got two different stories, two different sources of information. Okay, then maybe we should take a look and see what's going on. And I would say then if you don't want what's going on inside, you put everybody out. So,
Two of the 3 commission seats are on the ballot. 2 former commissioners are running for those seats, including one, Democrat Dan Polivka, who served 16 years on the commission. When you go to the polling booth and you look at this ballot and you see these names, do they offer stability or staleness? Seeing these 2 former commissioners running for commission again.
Most people, when they see somebody as long-term as Dan Polivka, they're just going to say, oh, that's a familiar face, and they're just going to vote for him. So, yeah.
Would you like to see change? Would you like to see new blood? And what do you think is preventing that in county races?
Yeah, I think change would be sufficient. We, had to talk about maybe a younger generation kind of running things around the not just the city but everywhere. I mean, instead of the ones that do repetitive terms, I mean, how are you supposed to implement change if the same people keep on running and getting elected?
Riley, what do you think?
I mean, I think the staleness is a bit of a problem. I think it would be nice to get a younger generation in, but it's getting them to run. I think one of the problems is the amount of younger people who are trying to get out of this area. I mean, I've heard so many people who say that, I mean, you see it on bumper stickers stuck in Ohio. People want out of Ohio, it seems, not even just Trumbull County. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. You have a lot of the major people who vote are the older generation, especially in the local politics. And to get a younger generation in, you'd have to somehow start in the schools or talking to them young about how to do more local government. I mean, when I was in school, we talked nothing about our local government. Nobody knew how any local government worked. It was all federal, the biggest of the big, or different countries, how their systems work. So I think it would be more important to add more curriculum to the school districts to show that, like, how the system works in your local area, not just the federal.
Julie, you've told me you often feel disengaged at election time because of the candidates. What are your thoughts when you look at who's up for Trumbull County Commission, or when you look at your ballot overall?
Oh, yeah, I see a bunch of bozos on there. It doesn't make a difference to me that they've been around for a long time. It's they've been around for a long time and haven't addressed the issues. If you've been in 2-3 terms and you're not doing anything, why am I going to bring you back?
Paul?
You caught me in the middle of a thought. I was just thinking, a lot of times we don't hold the elected officials accountable. If you look at any of the county meetings, the commissioner meetings, there's hardly anyone in attendance, the residents. So, when you're not present, then you can do whatever you want. And that's week after week after week, month after month after month that, I'm at work, so I don't have time to attend that meeting. Mm-hmm. So that's, and they get comfortable doing what they do. And that's going back to name recognition. Okay, well, that's Polivka, that's Fuda. I mean, he finally retired. When Nikki got elected, she was the first Republican. It was 3 Democrats.
And first woman since
yes.
1983 or something.
And I would just like to say, I don't know if you all noticed the routine, but when people disagree with you on that level, the first thing they do is they paint you crazy. They paint you, oh, you're a problem, this, that, and the other. And that's what happened to her. And then once you say that enough and you get a few bad moments in the camera, then people think that, and then she's out, And so that you see that in Hollywood. They're crazy. Kanye West is crazy. You just go through that's the plan. They mark you crazy and then they get you out. So the staleness, there's definitely staleness there. We need the change. I would like to see people like Nikki French go back in, different, younger, or what have you. That's where I was at, even here with the city. I mean, Mayor Franklin, I voted for Mayor Franklin when he first ran for mayor and his reelection. After that, he was stale. We lost the mills here in Warren. We lost a lot of things. Okay, I'm ready for a change. It's nothing personal. It's just time for somebody else, with fresh ideas.
And you said you voted for his reelection. Was that last year when the mayor's race was?
This is his third term from being elected mayor.
And did you vote for him for mayor last year, or you just didn't?
No, I was on the campaign trail for Ken McPherson that was running for mayor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Do I remember right? Have you considered running for public office?
Yeah.
Explain that sigh and that look on your face. That was priceless.
Because I live in the 7th Ward, which is the northwest side of Warren, and we are in desperate need of a council person over on the 7th Ward. Again, going back to staleness. That guy's just been in there, does nothing, and it's time for change. And so I've been vocal, I've been out, I've been speaking, working with Mr. McPherson, and so he floated the idea, well, why don't you consider running for council in the 7th Ward? And, and this is one of the reasons I'm here now, so this is pouring fuel on his fire. This is why you should be running. You're passionate. And, I'm for what's right. I'm a fair guy. Let's just do what common sense things make sense. But yes.
And Marwan, you've played with the idea?
No, people just mentioned it to me and, said you should run for something in the office. But I never really, moved forward on anything. I wish I had more of the time to at least help make change. But I gotta piggyback off something that Riley said, and it kind of blew my mind. That's all I'm thinking about as you guys are talking. Education, right there in high school, right before you get out. Okay, if somebody, if they had criteria that would educate these people, so they can go and run for these offices, that would make a lot of sense. I was just talking to somebody the other day about, in my real estate industry, there's people who have just credit that is horrible, and they're so young, and because they were never educated at all on how to maintain their credit when they turn 18 and up, if they had stuff like that in school that kind of taught them how to write a check, utilize credit cards, how imperative it is to not take out as many student loans as people take out and just whatever. I mean, so I think it all falls into high school before you become an adult. Also, the people who've been in office, even just around here, for all these years, like Dan Polifka, you got to be willing to mold somebody younger to do your position. You can't hang on to it. That's all they're doing is they're holding on to it for so long until the day they want to retire. They need to be able to preserve the future generation by molding other people into their position, and that other people are the younger generation.
All right. Issue 1, the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment. Have you been following that? Okay.
I have.
Yeah.
All right. Political observers and scholars say gerrymandered district maps help create extremism. We've been talking about extremism. Gerrymandering manipulates district boundaries to keep a party in power.
Right.
It creates safe districts for a party that reduces competition and accountability and incentivizes more highly partisan candidates. And it creates disproportionate legislatures. Here in Ohio, Republicans have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, whereas in statewide elections overall, there's something like 54% Republican, 43% Democratic split, yet we have these supermajorities in the House and Senate. So issue 1 proposes to end gerrymandered maps. We're currently operating under maps that were deemed illegal gerrymanders by the Ohio Supreme Court, both the congressional maps and the legislative maps. So issue 1, the Citizens Not Politicians issue that will be on your ballot, on November 5th aims to get politicians out of drawing the district maps with the idea that they've got a vested interest in protecting themselves and their parties, and giving it to a 15-member citizen panel. I wonder what you think of that, what your vote would be on that, and whether you think gerrymandering is a problem or whether it's just the spoils of war. Riley?
Gerrymandering, I think, is a humongous problem. I think it is a death of democracy. If you can gerrymander a state that is 60-40 in their political leans, but then make it a supermajority, that's not what the people want. That's obviously not what the people want. But you're making these weird lines and drawing them all over. You're getting mathematicians to figure out how you're going to get the best vote. It's ridiculous.
Julie?
Well, I should first state that I had the advantage of being trained in cartography. So I support issue 1, absolutely. It's not going to end gerrymandering. You're never, ever, ever going to end gerrymandering. But the Republican legislature had time to fix the problem that they were ordered to fix by the court. They chose not to do it. So I have no faith in them working to solve the problem, and it should go to a commission.
What about you, Paul? What do you think?
I'm not in favor of redistricting just to benefit to sway a vote in any ways, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where you draw the line if you're not going to get people out to vote and to be concerned about that. It doesn't really change a whole lot. And I guess that's the whole reason why you want to redistrict and draw lines to benefit from that. But I don't support it.
You don't support, do you yes on issue 1 or no on issue 1?
No on issue.
No on issue 1. So you don't want a citizen panel redrawing the lines.
Well, because if I'm not mistaken, I think I do remember that was what the lawsuit was about, where the Democrats.
Do you think, this is sort of to your point, Julie, do you think having citizens draw the maps is going to make a big difference in terms of more proportionality? I mean, Republicans would argue that we are serving voters' interests. Most voters in Ohio vote Republican.
Right.
We've got all the the 5 executive seats at the executive level in the state are all Republicans.
Yeah, I rephrasing it, I'm in support of residents picking or drawing, redistricting the lines versus political parties, because that, again, that's just favoring themselves, and I'm not in favor of that.
Marwan?
I'm thinking about it. I don't even know if I can answer that question without looking more into it. It's a hit or miss with it. I can't answer for it. I would have to put more time into thinking about it.
All right, one last issue question and then we'll wrap up. I wanted to talk about red lines, the line you will not cross to support the candidates on the ballot this year. Julie, I know that was a big part of our conversation. For you, it's whether a candidate stands with Palestinians in the Israel-Hamas war. Could you say a little bit more on why you feel so strongly about that?
Yeah, I don't have a real personal connection to Palestine, but
you're wearing remind me what that's called?
Keffiyeh.
A keffiyeh.
I don't think anybody deserves to be treated that way. And 100,000 Palestinians didn't survive the Biden administration. So what's going to happen in the next 4 years?
And do you think Kamala Harris is just an extension of that
Yes,
Biden
I do.
administration? So you will not
I
vote
absolutely
for her,
will not support Kamala Harris.
even if that means Donald Trump winning.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what that means.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
what that means.
Paul, what about you? What's your red line, and what's the one thing that you will not cross, even if a candidate checks off the boxes in a lot of other areas for you?
It's it's kind of a tough question now, only because the last time we talked, I had that line. I thought it was drawn. I was we need someone that's going to bring down the rhetoric.
Right, you voted for Trump in 2016 and then flipped to Biden in 2020 and regretted it.
Yes, and regretted it. And so this year, I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm going to do anything because I didn't like either one of those candidates. And I understand, that you vote somebody. But, and so my line was, well, we need somebody to bring down rhetoric. The tensions, the racial tensions, all that we're experiencing in this country is just, to me, at limits. I mean, people are road rage. I mean, just fighting, killing. I mean, it's just too much. And we're not smart enough to not react on trigger words and phrases. We just respond. And so you need somebody that's going to be responsible about the words that comes out of their mouth. Having said that, I'm looking now at my financial situation. I'm looking at, my church. I'm looking at other things now that, like, wow, what do I do? Because at the end of the day, while we get caught up on, the presidents, I was looking at the fact of the matter was when Trump was in office, at the end of the day, I did better, I don't like the guy at all. And that's what makes me like today. I'm like, I don't know where I want to put this line at right now because last week we were threatening to be a strike with the shoremen on the barge and the docks there, and I'm like, oh man, if that doesn't get resolved quickly, I know the impact that's going to have immediately. So who knows what's going to happen between now and Election Day? That I may have to change and go vote in that booth. I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff happened since we talked.
Yeah, that's right. So your red line on rhetoric, are you suggesting
I might can ignore the rhetoric, is what I'm saying.
And vote for Trump.
And vote for Trump.
Marwan, your parents are from the West Bank.
Yeah.
And yet I know when we talked, the Israel-Hamas war, it was a more nuanced, it wasn't the bright red line for you as it is for Julie. Where does it stand in your weighing and measuring as you're for Trump. Trump, it was during his time in office, he was very pro-Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Biden is pro-Israel. I think America in general is pro-Israel. But, there's certain limits. Like right now, we support Israel, to be able to handle this whole war with Hamas. But there's a lot of citizens that are being affected as well. A lot of aid comes in, even from us, to go and help the citizens, but they're being halted by the Israelis in certain aspects, So, and that's where, when you're telling me your story, that's good that you're thinking that way, because as a person who would always support the U.S., no matter what, and this is where me and my family bump heads, like, nobody should be able to suffer without medical food, especially citizens or just innocent bystanders.
How do you and your family bump heads about this?
Oh, man. I really hope they're not watching this.
Well,
yeah, I'm the only one. I am, but at the same time, I've done my research. They feel like the military brainwashed me. I don't think that's the case. I think that I just saw other options, okay? When you're raised in one way, that's all you know, okay? It's up to you to go and find different ways and to lay it all out and then make a decision on your own. Yeah.
And I know that you connected with Riley about this when we met earlier.
Sure.
Riley, you had a seminal moment early on in your childhood where your parents encouraged you to think for yourself as a voter.
Mm-hmm. In fourth grade, we had a mock election in our fourth grade, and it was Obama, McCain, I believe. And my teacher told us, you're going to vote whatever your parents vote. You're going to go down, you'll ask them, if they vote Republican, you'll vote for the red. If they vote Democrat, you're going to vote for the blue. So I went home, asked, and they're like, well, you don't decide. We don't decide what you are. You decide what you want to be. and you figure out what you are. And then for that mock election, I ended up voting Obama, but I have no idea why. But
What's your bright line?
I don't. I mean, rhetoric is a pretty important one to me. I think sticking with minorities is one of the more important things to me. I mean, Trump, his rhetoric against minorities only fuels more hate against minorities, and it fuels things, whether he is attached to it or not, things like Project 2025. It's his people who are making those things, and it's his rhetoric that spawns those things. If it's and the way he says, I mean, that there's good on both sides, but there isn't. That there wasn't. Some sides are bad, in my opinion. But primarily, I don't have super big red lines. I talked about this before when we talked before, but that's not my idea. But when I vote, I think about it as getting onto a school or a bus. Like if my goal is to get to New York and from Ohio, I'm not going to take a bus that's going to take me to California to get there. I'm going to take me a bus that's probably going to get me to Philly. That's not to New York. I'm not going to get to New York. I know I'm not going to get to New York, but Philly is closer. So I'm going to get to the bus that takes me to Philly. Whether I'm going to have to do some walking, I'm going to have to put some work in to get myself the rest of the way, but I would rather be as close as possible than the far extreme the other direction.
So Harris, Julie, doesn't get you to Philly. You want to go to New York.
She doesn't even get me on the bus.
You want to ride with me?
All right. I want to wrap this up two ways. First of all, I want to know what's the most important issue for you in Warren or Niles that you feel no one is talking about. Just a quick lightning round.
It would be infrastructure, adding jobs back to this area.
Julie?
Public transportation.
Paul?
I'm going to go with youth in Warren.
Leadership.
Leadership, okay. People listening to this learned something about Warren through you and our discussion today. Tell me Warren's best kept secret. What do you want people to know about Warren or Niles or the Mahoning Valley? Riley?
I think Warren, we strive for small businesses. I think we have some of the best, in the area, small businesses. We're sitting in Sunrise. This place has been here it's the first pizza place that's ever been in Warren. You have places like Raptus Coffee, which is, I know him, so I'm kind of biased, but great coffee. They sell at the Mocha House. So you have the Mocha House, which is a standard. You have the hot dog shop. You have smaller places like Color 3 Embroidery. You have so many small businesses that can build and stay here for a long time. And like they said, we were talking to the owner of Sunrise that there's not an empty building in the square right now because how good we are to small businesses.
Julie?
Oh, you gotta come to a summer concert at the AMP. So much fun.
Paul?
You better pass. I'm trying to come up with something.
Well,
Marwan?
we get no hurricanes. We get no earthquakes. It's the economy is a lot more simpler than other states. So before Warren started accumulating more businesses around here, people would just come here to retire, and that's it. But now it's starting to strive. It really is. So, and soon, as time goes on, it's going to start booming.
Paul, we gave you some time. Is it difficult for you to come up with?
I guess to a degree it is. When I listen to Riley, Julie, and Maron here, they, the businesses, they do deserve a shout out here because we do have some good businesses. I think my disappointment is where the city has come, how we've fallen. And that's where I struggle to give an A+ here. But our businesses, they don't deserve that C minus because they're still here and they're trying to make it. And for them, I give them an A.
So we had some delicious pizza.
Absolutely.
We got to know one another a little better, and you got to share your concerns and opinions as voters. As we wrap up, I'd like to know what will stay with you from this discussion. Did anything shift or open up for you? Did anything shut down and harden? Julie, I'll start with you.
I don't have a job now, and after this, I'll probably never have a job again.
Okay. And that's what you drew from this conversation? Any impressions that from our discussion that you're walking away with?
I just met some great people today.
Great. How about you, Paul?
Well, first of all, I would like to go back to something at the beginning of this show here. And I would just like to let Julie know that she could come by the church. I know she said she goes from churches to get the food bank. And we do have a food bank at our church there at 4179 Parkman Road. So outside of that, I'm pretty much the same. You know, I did meet some great people and made me think of some things, you know, from a different perspective. But you know,
What things?
well, our conversation here on real estate and just the turnaround that brings some hope. That there are some positive things that are on the brink happening here in Warren, and if they can come to fruition, that's going to be great, and that will begin to change. And our real estate guy here gave me some insight, so I'm thinking, okay, you know, maybe, you know, let's give it a little chance to see what happens. We need it, you know. My church needs it, you know. The members, the citizens need it. Everyone here needs that. So.
What will stay with you, Marwan? Did anything shift for you?
I think on Sunday we're all going to go to Paul's church. You know? So, and then, just being able to sit with people that think completely different, and here we are having a good conversation. There's no arguments. There's no excessive debating. That right there should tell people that anybody can sit down and just work things out and talk. You know, as for real estate, I don't know what to say. It just, when the topic comes on, I can't help it. It's like a disease. I mean, I never thought I'd get this far into the field. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Riley, what will stay with you?
Well, one, what Julie was talking about when it comes to immigrants being considered a second class of workers, that's something I'm going to be probably pondering about and thinking about. I definitely met a lot of great people, and I honestly wish we could talk more. There was many subjects I wish I could have continued talking about. There was multiple times I was like, oh, I kind of want to chime in there.
Can you name two?
A bit. I would love to talk a little bit more about the tariff situation and how they affect the economy, and going more into the Palestinian conflict.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, your courage, and your courtesy. Marwan Ali, Paul Ringgold, Julie Stout, Riley DeCavich. This has been a really compelling and gratifying discussion, and I thank you very much for it.
Thank you, Amy.
We'd like to bring you back together after the election. I look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Further conversation about that later. You've been listening to A Slice of Politics, an Ideastream Public Media production. This discussion with 4 Warren area voters is part of Listen, Engage, Vote 2024, our comprehensive coverage of the election. For more stories, a voter guide, and voting information, head to ideastream.org/election 2024. I'm Amy Eddings. Thank you.
Thank you.